Insie Samkela Maseko is in Chiawelo, Soweto, where President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to cast his vote. A very busy morning there in Soweto already. Any idea when he's going to be turning up?
Yes, indeed, Jane. The President of the Republic of South Africa and the President of the governing party currently, the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, will be casting his vote here in Chiawelo. When you look into the historical context of Chiawelo in regards to Cyril Ramaphosa, this is where he grew up. This is where his teens were before he went to the University of Limpopo, University of Venda, to study law, where he joined the Black Consciousness movement there. So historically, this is where he's always casted his vote. Even in the 2016 local government elections, this is where the president casted his vote. Looking into the fact that he grew up here in Soweto, you'd understand that when it comes to South African politics, Soweto has played a very huge and pivotal role. The likes of Tata Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela are from who lived here in Soweto. Then you've got Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, who was also, before she died, she was part and parcel of the people here in Soweto. And her last steps, when she was being taken to her gravesite, she moved from Soweto. So this is the historical context of Soweto, and since the morning we've seen large queues in various voting stations here in Soweto of South Africans and Soweto residents going to cast their votes. I'm just going to ask my colleague Mbudzeni just to show you some of the queues they've gone slightly less now, but these are the queue that's currently there of Soweto residents going to cast their ballot papers and their votes here at Chiawelo Primary School, where the President of the Republic will also be voting here as well, Jane.
And in the last hour or so, we also saw Musi Mamani rock up in Soweto. He said it's important for him. Obviously, it's his birthplace, and he was talking about change. He was being very optimistic. I mean, this really is a race between the DA and the ANC now, isn't it? Important that they get Soweto so they can get Gauteng.
Well, Jane, I wouldn't categorically state it as fact that it's a battle between the Democratic Alliance and the African National Congress. You've got the Economic Freedom Fighters, which has basically eaten away about 10% of the African National Congress votes, particularly here in Gauteng. If you look at the 2014 local government elections and how the Economic Freedom Fighters fared, specifically here in Gauteng and in Soweto, they fared very well. Looking into the fact also that Gauteng is a hung council between that there is no clear outright majority. It's a coalition government that controls the city of Johannesburg and the city of Tshwane. So you can't rule out the Economic Freedom Fighters, specifically in a province like Gauteng. In the stats that I looked at, the bulk of the votes that came for the Economic Freedom Fighters was in Limpopo, in Gauteng, and in the Free State province. So they have a fair number of support when it comes to the specific area of Gauteng and Soweto. But interestingly, it is the ANC that controls the majority of the wards. When you look at ward councillors, when it came to the 2016 local government elections, they have a largely huge support base in Soweto, in Gauteng, in Johannesburg. When you look at the stats of the local government elections, they tell you that a vast majority of residents, particularly in Tshwane and in Johannesburg and in Ekurhuleni, they stayed away from the polls and never went to vote. This is proven by various research studies that have been done when it comes to the voting patterns of the 2016 local government elections. But you can't compare that much the 2016 local government elections or local government elections with the national general elections, which we are currently at this point in time. But in 2016, the new kids on the block, the Economic Freedom Fighters, had a 10% shareholding of the votes in Gauteng. The Democratic Alliance was sitting at about 30-something%, and then the other bulk went to the African National Congress at about 54-55%. They are even saying in these general elections this time around this year, they are looking to cling on to power in Gauteng with about 56-57% of the electoral vote, which will basically mean that the Gauteng province is not hung. That is in relation to the internal stats that were done by the African National Congress. That is their own research as compared to the results that were the research results that were issued out yesterday by Ipsos, which is basically saying that if there's a huge voter turnout in these general elections, you can look at the African National Congress going at about above 60%, 61%. If the turnout is low, if it's a really high voter turnout, they would be looking at about getting 65%. But the Economic Freedom Fighters and the Democratic Alliance have set their sights on reducing the African National Congress, specifically here in Gauteng, under 50%, which would basically mean that this province is hung. But the interesting fact, you've got two former presidents of the African National Congress. That is former President Kgalema Motlanthe, that is former President Thabo Mbeki. Former President Kgalema Motlanthe is obviously the former Deputy President of the ANC, and the incumbent President of the ANC now, Cyril Ramaphosa. All three of them are voting in the economic hub of South Africa, which would be Gauteng.
Okay, good bit of number crunching there, Samkela.